The Kalari Union had never faced a threat like this. Their world, Velour, was a place of soft light and gentle winds. Crystals grew like trees across the plains, and streams ran clear and warm. The Kalari themselves were a delicate species, tall and thin, with smooth skin that shimmered faintly in sunlight. They were scholars, thinkers, and artists. They had built a society where knowledge mattered more than power, and they had lived peacefully for thousands of years. But now, everything they had built was under threat. The Tsar Dominion had arrived without warning. Ships like black mountains filled the skies above Velour, dropping small, fast craft that tore apart the crystal plains. The Kalari were unprepared for violence on this scale. They tried to fight with their weapons, but the Tsar were stronger, faster, and ruthless. The Kalari defenses fell quickly. Their towers crumbled under the energy beams of the invaders, and their soldiers were overwhelmed almost instantly. Even their scientists, who had worked on energy shields for decades, could not stop the Tsar ships from destroying their cities. In desperation, the Council of Velour gathered in the largest hall of their capital. It was a beautiful place, made of crystal and silver, with sunlight streaming through enormous windows. The council members sat in a circle, their thin hands trembling as they spoke in low voices. They had never asked for help from the outside before. They had always believed that their world was safe, that the galaxy was too vast and too full of dangers for anyone to notice Velour. Now, they had no choice. "We cannot hold them," said Liraine, the oldest member of the council. Her voice was soft, but the sadness in it filled the room. "Our defenses are failing. Our soldiers cannot fight them. If we do not act, our world will be destroyed. We must send a call for help," said another council member, a younger Kalari named Orion. His voice shook as he spoke, though he tried to hide it. "We cannot defeat the Tsar alone. We need allies, someone with strength, with courage, with weapons that can match theirs." The council agreed, though with heavy hearts. The Kalari had a simple method for sending distress calls. They used an ancient network of communication nodes that could reach other species across the galaxy. Usually, these calls were meant for trade or knowledge exchange. No one expected them to work for war, but now, the council activated the system, sending a plea into the void. The message was simple, almost pleading. It described the Tsar attack, the destruction of Velour, and the desperate need for assistance. The Kalari included the coordinates of their planet, hoping that anyone who received the call would understand the danger. They signed the message with their titles and names, speaking for an entire species. Hours passed. Then, a reply came. It was not from the noble powers of the galaxy, as the council had hoped. It was not from the great fleets of the Orcs Protectorate or the fortified worlds of the Vorian Alliance. The reply came from a system no one had heard much about. A small, blue planet orbiting a yellow star called Sol. The message was short, direct, and strange. It said that help was on the way and gave the estimated time of arrival. There were no formalities, no long introductions, just a promise. The humans were coming. The council members stared at the message in confusion. Humans? They had only a few scattered references in their archives. Humans were known to exist on a dangerous, unpredictable planet, full of extreme weather, hostile animals, and violent storms. They had survived, yes, but no one had ever sent humans into interstellar battle. The council assumed that perhaps only a small team would arrive, a handful of advisors, maybe a few lightly armed ships, enough to give moral support, but not enough to fight. Then, a few days later, the Kalari saw them. 3 enormous ships entered the atmosphere of Velour. Unlike the Tsar vessels, which were sleek and black, these ships were heavy, dark, and strong-looking. Their hulls were thick and angular, with engines that roared like thunder. The clouds above the Kalari capital twisted as the ships descended, and the ground trembled under the force of their landing. When the landing bays opened, humans stepped out. They were taller and broader than the Kalari, with strong bodies that seemed capable of surviving almost anything. Their faces were serious, their movements confident and precise. They wore armor that gleamed faintly under velour's sun, and they carried strange weapons that the Kelari could barely understand. A man in the center introduced himself as Ethan Cole, the commander of the human unit. His voice was calm, steady, and full of authority. He spoke in a language that the Kelari's translators understood instantly, and he told them that his team was ready to help. Beside him stood Grace Miller, a tactical specialist who scanned the surroundings with sharp, calculating eyes. She moved silently, noting every detail of the terrain and the enemy positions. Marcus Lane, the medic, inspected the Kelari with curiosity, studying their fragile bodies and asking questions about their physiology. The humans did not seem afraid of anything: the Tsar ships, the toxic air, the dangerous wildlife. They simply prepared for action. The council watched in awe and fear. They had expected assistance, but not like this. They had expected advisors and lightly armed teams. They had not expected warriors who looked as if they had been forged in hardship. Ethan spoke again. "We are here to help. Tell us everything you know about the Tsar, their positions, and their movements. We will handle the rest." The Kelari hesitated. How could such fragile beings survive in battle? How could they face enemies as powerful as the Tsar? But they had no choice. They shared what they knew, pointing out the locations of enemy ships, supply depots, and command centers. The humans listened quietly, taking notes and making calculations. Then, without delay, they moved out. The first encounter came sooner than expected. A Tsar patrol ship approached the landing area, its weapons charged and ready. The Kelari held their breath, expecting the humans to retreat or hesitate. But the humans did not retreat. Ethan gave a calm command, and the humans fired with precision. Their weapons struck the Tsar vessel with deadly accuracy, disabling it before it could harm anyone. The Kelari gasped. They had never seen such efficiency in combat. The humans did not panic, did not hesitate, and did not waste time. They used the environment, the terrain, and their instincts to gain the upper hand. Ethan turned to the council. "We need to move quickly. The Tsar will respond to this attack. Prepare your people for evacuation if needed. We will take the fight to them." The council members nodded, still in shock. They had asked for help, and what they had received was more than they could have imagined. Over the next few days, the humans organized the Kelari defenses. They trained soldiers, repaired damaged equipment, and set up strategic points across the plains. Grace Miller showed Kelari tacticians how to use terrain to their advantage. Marcus Lane treated the wounded, moving effortlessly under fire. Ethan Cole coordinated attacks, using intelligence from scouts to anticipate the Tsar movements. The Kelari began to understand something important. These humans were not just fighters. They were survivors, shaped by a world that demanded strength, resourcefulness, and endurance. Earth, the Kelari realized, must have been a dangerous place indeed to create such beings. Then came the first major battle. The Tsar launched an attack on a Kelari city, sending hundreds of soldiers and drones to destroy everything in sight. The Kelari feared the worst. But the humans had prepared. They set traps, organized ambushes, and led counterattacks that confused and terrified the Tsar soldiers. Ethan moved through the battlefield calmly, issuing orders with a quiet authority. Grace coordinated squads with precision, and Marcus treated the injured without stopping. The humans seemed to anticipate every move the Tsar made, turning danger into advantage. By the end of the battle, the Kelari city was still standing. The Tsar had retreated, battered and confused. The Kelari Council could hardly believe what they had seen. The humans were not just warriors. They were protectors, capable of facing threats that no other species could withstand. That night, the council gathered again. They spoke in whispers, afraid to break the spell of what had just happened. "Who are these beings?" asked Liraine. "They are not like anyone we have ever known. They are unstoppable." Orion shook his head. "I do not know. They call themselves humans. But they are more than that. They are Deathworlders. Survivors of a planet that must have been harsher than any we can imagine. They have strength, courage, and endurance beyond our comprehension. The humans rested that night in their camps, but even in sleep, they remained alert. The Kalari watched them, realizing that their world had been lucky, not because they had asked for help, but because the help that came was not ordinary. It was extraordinary. By the time dawn arrived, the humans were already moving again, preparing for the next phase of battle. The Kalari understood something profound. They had sent a call into the galaxy asking for soldiers. They had expected help. They had not expected executioners, survivors, and warriors forged by a world that had hardened them against death itself. The Tsar would soon return. And when they did, they would find that the gentle scholars of Velour were not alone. Something much fiercer had come to their aid. The Kalari had asked for help. They had received humanity. And humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The morning on Velour was quiet, but the humans were already moving. Ethan Cole walked across the plains with calm purpose, his eyes scanning the horizon. Grace Miller followed, checking the maps they had drawn from Kalari reports. Marcus Lane carried his medical kit, ready for anything. The Kalari watched from a distance, still in awe of these strange visitors. They had expected help, but the humans moved like something far stronger than any normal army. Ethan called the Kalari soldiers together. "Listen carefully," he said. "The Tsar are smart. They watch our moves and react quickly. We need to be faster and smarter. We will not just defend. We will make them fear attacking." The Kalari were hesitant. Their species had never fought like this before. Their training was based on defense, not attack. But the humans did not wait for permission. They began organizing squads, showing the Kalari how to use the terrain to their advantage. Small hills became cover. Crystal forests became ambush points. Streams became natural barriers. Every part of Velour could be a weapon if used correctly. Grace Miller demonstrated the first ambush. She took a group of Kalari soldiers and showed them how to hide along a ridge where the Tsar often passed. She explained timing, angles, and patience. The Kalari listened carefully, impressed and nervous at the same time. Then, the humans led the attack. From hidden positions, they struck with precision, using weapons that fired fast and strong. Tsar soldiers were caught by surprise. They fell back quickly, confused by the sudden attack. Ethan watched calmly. "Do not get overconfident," he said. "They will return stronger. Learn from this, and adapt. Fight with your mind as much as your hands." The Kalari began to understand that humans were not just fighters. They were thinkers, planners, and learners in battle. Each movement had a purpose. Every risk was calculated, and they endured what no Kalari could. Humans walked through poisonous mists without hesitation. They climbed unstable cliffs where the ground shifted beneath them. They fought in storms that would drive most other species to hide. Marcus Lane moved among the soldiers, tending to wounds while explosions rang out nearby. He never stopped, never panicked, never complained. The Kalari were shocked to see him calmly sewing a cut on a young soldier's arm, while another fight raged only meters away. "They are fearless," one Kalari whispered. "Or they are made for this world." Days passed, and the humans continued training the Kalari. They showed them how to read enemy movements, how to predict attacks, and how to use the environment to survive. They demonstrated traps and diversions, teaching the Kalari that a strong defense could become a deadly offense. The Kalari started to believe they had a chance, something they had never felt before. Then, the Tsar attacked in force. Hundreds of ships appeared over the crystal plains, launching missiles and sending soldiers to destroy everything in sight. The Kalari panicked at first, but the humans remained calm. Ethan called the human squads together. "Positions," he ordered. "Remember your training. Watch, listen, and strike with precision. We will control this battlefield." The humans moved with skill that amazed the Kalari. Grace Miller directed small squads to take positions behind natural cover. Ethan coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Marcus Lane ran to treat the wounded, moving between groups without slowing down. The Kelari saw something they had never seen before. Soldiers who fought as if the world itself could not harm them. The first clash was intense. Tsar soldiers charged forward, their weapons deadly. But the humans were faster, stronger, and smarter. They fired with perfect aim, dodged attacks, and used the terrain to trap the enemy. Tsar drones were caught in hidden nets and destroyed. Missile strikes were diverted into empty fields. Every move the Tsar made seemed anticipated. The Kelari were in shock. "How can they survive this?" one whispered. "They should be dead." "But they are not." Ethan noticed the Kelari watching and spoke. "You will survive if you learn to move with the world, not against it. The Tsar are dangerous, but we are not afraid. Fear can be used as a tool, not a weakness." As the battle continued, the humans showed why they were called Deathworlders. They did not just fight, they adapted. When the Tsar tried a new weapon that released toxic gas, the humans quickly used cloth and mud to protect themselves. When the ground beneath them cracked and collapsed, they turned it into a trap for the enemy. When the sky opened with acid rain, they kept moving, using shields and armor to protect themselves while leading the Tsar into ambushes. The Kelari watched in amazement. Their scholars had studied many species in the galaxy, but none could survive like humans. Humans thrived in danger. They were built by hardship, shaped by harsh environments, and trained to endure what others could not. Ethan led a squad into the heart of the Tsar formation. The Kelari held their breath. They expected humans to be destroyed, but they were not. Ethan's team moved with precision, disabling Tsar weapons and creating openings for the Kelari to follow. Grace coordinated attacks from multiple angles, confusing the Tsar soldiers. Marcus patched wounds even as battles raged around him. By the end of the day, the Tsar had retreated, their forces broken and disorganized. The Kelari could hardly believe it. Their cities were safe, and the humans were unharmed. They had expected a miracle, but what they witnessed was skill, courage, and endurance beyond imagination. That night, the humans rested, but even in sleep they remained alert. Ethan walked through the camp, checking positions and talking quietly to his squad. Grace reviewed the maps again, planning for the next day. Marcus checked supplies and medical kits. The Kelari watched silently, realizing that these humans did not just survive, they were built to thrive in danger. Liraine, the council elder, spoke quietly to Orion. "They are more than soldiers. They are something else. They are unstoppable." Orion nodded. "They are from a world that must have been harsher than ours. They are Deathworlders. They are not afraid of death because they have faced it constantly. They fight with their minds, their bodies, and their instincts. We are lucky they came to help us." The next day, the Tsar returned, this time with more ships and soldiers. They had learned from the previous attack and hoped to overwhelm Velour. But the humans were ready. Ethan called the squads together. "We know their patterns. We know their strengths and weaknesses. Today, we will take the fight to them." The humans moved like shadows across the plains. Grace led squads through hidden paths, striking the Tsar supply lines. Ethan directed attacks on key targets, using timing and precision to create confusion. Marcus moved tirelessly, treating injuries while keeping squads moving. The Kelari soldiers followed as best they could, inspired and guided by the humans. The battle was fierce. Explosions shook the ground. Tsar soldiers charged with deadly weapons. Drones flew overhead, firing beams of energy. But the humans remained calm. They adapted to every attack, using the environment to their advantage. They led the Tsar into traps, avoided deadly fire, and counterattacked with precision. The Kelari realized something important. Humans were not afraid of danger. They did not hesitate when things were deadly. They did not panic when the world around them fell apart. They were born to survive, born to fight, and born to protect those who could not protect themselves. Ethan moved through the battlefield like a ghost, He gave orders, led attacks, and remained calm under fire. Grace coordinated squads with skill and intelligence. Marcus moved tirelessly, patching wounds and saving lives. Together, they turned the battle in favor of Veluur. By the evening, the Tsar had been defeated again. Their forces were shattered, their confidence broken. The Kalari could hardly believe it. They had expected help, but they had not expected warriors like these. They had asked for soldiers and received something far stronger. The humans did not celebrate. They checked positions, treated the wounded, and prepared for the next attack. To them, victory was not a reason to rest. It was a reason to prepare for what was coming next. The Kellery Council gathered again, speaking in whispers. "They are not just warriors," said Liraine. "They are protectors. They are something beyond what we know." Orion nodded. "We asked for help. We got Deathworlders. We are alive because of them. We have never seen strength like this, and we may never see it again." The humans continued to move through Veluur, teaching, fighting, and protecting. Each day, the Kellery learned more about them. They learned that humans could endure pain without fear, think under pressure, and adapt faster than any other species in the galaxy. Veluur had survived its first wave of attacks, not because of its own defenses, but because of the humans who had come to their aid. The Kellery understood now why they were called Deathworlders. They were not just fighters. They were survivors of worlds that demanded the strongest, the cleverest, and the bravest. The Council looked at the humans and realized something else as well. The galaxy had underestimated them. Humans were not just another species. They were forces of nature, capable of facing dangers no one else could. The Tsar would soon learn that lesson, but for now, Veluur was safe, and the humans were just beginning to show what they could do. The sun rose over Veluur, painting the crystal plains in golden light. The Kellery could feel the tension in the air. Scouts reported a massive Tsar fleet approaching. This was no small attack. Hundreds of ships filled the skies, accompanied by waves of soldiers and drones. The Council feared it might be the end of their world. The humans were already moving. Ethan Cole stood at the front of the main camp, his eyes scanning the horizon. Grace Miller checked the maps one last time, coordinating positions with precision. Marcus Lane walked among the Kellery soldiers, offering calm words and final instructions. There was no panic, no fear, only focus. Ethan addressed the Kellery. "Today, we fight not only to defend your world but to make sure the Tsar never return. Stay with your units, follow instructions, and trust what you have learned. Do not run. Stand your ground. You are not alone." The Kellery nodded, their fear mixed with a growing hope. They had seen the humans fight, adapt, and survive. They had witnessed strength unlike anything they had imagined. Now, they would face the greatest challenge yet. The Tsar fleet entered Veluur's atmosphere with overwhelming force. Energy beams tore across the sky, and the ground shook as bombs exploded on the crystal plains. Kellery soldiers trembled, but the humans were ready. Ethan gave calm, clear orders. "Move to your positions. Use the terrain. Watch the enemy. Strike when ready." Human squads spread across the battlefield with incredible speed. Grace Miller led small teams to hidden vantage points. They fired at Tsar troops with deadly accuracy. Ethan coordinated multiple squads, striking the enemy from all sides. Marcus ran between groups, treating wounds even as the battlefield erupted around him. The Kellery could barely keep up. Their weapons were weaker, their bodies more fragile. But the humans guided them, giving instructions and encouragement. Every human action was precise, calculated, and effective. The first wave of Tsar soldiers reached the humans. They expected to crush Veluur with sheer force, but they met resistance unlike any they had faced. Humans did not panic, did not flee, and did not hesitate. They fought with strategy and skill, using every part of the environment to their advantage. Tsar drones flew overhead, firing energy beams. Humans dodged and used debris as cover. When the ground shook beneath them, they turned it into a trap, drawing Tsar soldiers into unstable areas. When toxic gas filled the air, humans covered their faces with cloth and pressed forward. Nothing stopped them. The Kalari watched in awe. Their scholars had studied many species, but none could survive like these humans. They endured pain, adapted instantly, and moved with precision. Each action was intentional, every risk calculated. They were not just soldiers. They were forces of nature, born to survive, to fight, and to protect. Ethan led a squad to strike the heart of the Tsar formation. The enemy flagship hovered above, massive and deadly. The Kalari thought it impossible to attack, but Ethan moved calmly. He directed his team with short, clear commands. Grace Miller flanked the enemy with small squads, creating chaos among the Tsar soldiers. Marcus Lane treated the wounded while moving forward, never stopping, never slowing. The humans struck with precision. They disabled the enemy flagship's engines and weapons, creating openings for the Kalari soldiers to follow. The Tsar soldiers were confused, unsure how to fight a force that moved faster and smarter than anything they had faced. Every human attack was coordinated, every maneuver anticipated. Ethan turned to one of his squad members. "Keep moving. Watch their patterns. Predict their next step." The soldier nodded, amazed at the calm and control of the human commander. Around them, the battlefield seemed chaotic, but the humans treated it like a game of strategy. They were not reckless. They were deliberate. The Tsar launched a massive counterattack. Hundreds of soldiers charged the humans at once. The sky was filled with ships, energy beams, and explosions. The Kalari feared this might be the end, but the humans did not waver. Grace Miller shouted commands to small squads, leading them to strike weak points in the enemy lines. Ethan coordinated attacks from multiple directions, confusing the Tsar soldiers. Marcus Lane continued to treat the injured, moving between squads under fire. Humans worked together with perfect timing, turning danger into advantage. The Kalari began to fight alongside them, learning courage from example. They followed the humans into battle, trusting their guidance. The humans had taught them to adapt, to anticipate, and to use their environment. Now, the Kalari moved with more confidence, though they were still far weaker than the Tsar. The battle reached the heart of Velour. The Tsar flagship prepared a final strike, ready to destroy the capital city. Ethan and his squad advanced toward it, moving through fire and debris. Grace Miller led flanking squads to prevent enemy reinforcements from reaching the flagship. Marcus Lane kept the wounded alive, ensuring soldiers could continue fighting. Ethan climbed onto a ridge overlooking the flagship. He called out clear commands. Fire on their engines. Disable their weapons. Keep them from moving. The humans struck with deadly precision. Missiles and energy blasts targeted the flagship's engines. Drones disabled weapon systems. Tsar soldiers tried to retaliate, but humans anticipated every attack. The flagship began to falter. Unable to control its massive body, Kalari soldiers watched in disbelief. They had thought the flagship indestructible, the Tsar unstoppable. But the humans proved them wrong. They had faced death and survived. They had fought against impossible odds and won. Ethan signaled his squad. Board it. Disable their systems completely. A small team of humans moved quickly. They climbed onto the flagship using ropes and grappling hooks, moving as if the battlefield was empty. Inside, they navigated corridors filled with enemy soldiers. They fought quickly and efficiently, neutralizing threats and shutting down the ship's control systems. Outside, Grace Miller led attacks to prevent enemy reinforcements. Marcus Lane moved among humans and Kalari soldiers alike, keeping them alive while explosions shook the ship. The flagship faltered and finally crashed onto the plains. Its massive body tore through the ground, leaving a path of destruction. But the humans and Kalari had survived. The Tsar soldiers retreated, fleeing from a force they could not understand or defeat. Velour was saved. The Kalari could hardly believe it. Their cities were intact, their people alive, and the Tsar fleet scattered. They had asked for help, and they had received something far beyond expectation. Ethan and his squad walked through the plains after the battle, checking positions and ensuring the enemy could not return. Grace Miller coordinated the Kalari soldiers, making sure they were safe and organized. Marcus Lane tended to the wounded, moving quickly and calmly. The council gathered to meet the humans. Liraine, the elder, spoke with deep respect. You have done more than protect us. You have shown us strength beyond anything we knew existed. How can we ever thank you? Ethan shook his head. We do not seek thanks. We do what we must. Your world is alive, and your people deserve a chance to live. That is enough. Grace Miller added, We will leave when you are ready, but we will always be here if you need us. Marcus Lane smiled gently at the council. Survival is not just for one species. We help because we can. That is what we do. The Kalari could see now why humans were called Deathworlders. They had survived worlds far harsher than Velour. They had adapted to danger, pain, and death in ways no other species could. They did not fight for glory, nor for conquest. They fought to protect, to endure, and to survive. Over the next few days, humans helped repair the damage, train more Kalari soldiers, and organize defenses for the future. The council watched with awe as humans worked tirelessly, never resting for long, always planning for the next challenge. Velour had survived its greatest threat, not because of its own strength, but because of humanity. The Kalari learned a lesson that would stay with them forever. Strength was not only in numbers or weapons. It was in courage, intelligence, adaptability, and endurance. The Tsar would eventually recover, but they would remember the humans. They would learn to fear a species that could endure any danger, adapt to any challenge, and fight with a determination no other species could match. The Kalari had asked for soldiers. They received Deathworlders. They received warriors who were more than soldiers. They were protectors, survivors, and champions. And humanity, as always, prepared for what came next, ready to face any danger with calm, focus, and unyielding strength. Velour had been saved, and the galaxy had seen something it would never forget. Humans were not ordinary. They were Deathworlders, and they had arrived just in time. The Kalari looked at them with respect, awe, and gratitude. They had witnessed the impossible. They had learned that help could come from places they had never imagined, and that the galaxy was a much wider, stranger, and more dangerous place than they had ever known. Humans had come, and with them, hope had arrived.